and perhaps they'll let me know. But so to start off with, who are you both and what is the food farm?
Kia ora koutou, ko Angela Clifford toku ingoa. My name's Angela Clifford. I co-own the food farm with my husband Nick. My day job is to lead Eat New Zealand, which is a national food collective that sits across the food system from our farmers and our fishers to our chefs. That's me.
So Nick, I grew up on a farm in Australia and didn't know we were doing this bit actually, but spent 30 years in the wine industry and now work across a couple of different sectors, obviously doing what we're doing here today, and also really enjoy working on the food farm and education and helping people sort of achieve their dreams of what they're doing on their own block as well, which is really cool.
So the food farm is a 16-acre permaculture property. When we first moved to the property, it was just 2 overgrazed paddocks with an old man pine, and that was it. We now have over 90 different varieties of fruit and vegetables. We have 3 food forests with a 4th one that's just in its inception. We have sheep and milking cows, bees, laying hens and meat birds. We have ducks, and often we have pigs as well, but we don't at the moment. But our most successful crop to date has been 3 children.
Another one has just walked into the building.
Yeah.
Here is my brother Flynn.
So Ruby, eldest, is 22, and Matilda is 19, and Flynn is 17. And when we moved to the food farm, Ruby was 6 months old, and then Matilda came along, and then Flynn was actually born on the food farm. So, it's been a place that we've raised our children first and foremost, but it's also been a place that's fed us on a whole lot of different levels, and a place that's fed our community as well. The food farm we started, Orchard's crawling towards us because we're trying to manifest this for her family as well, that one day, Orchard will also grow up on a food farm. Which is why they've called it Orchard, clearly. Or you could have called her Food Forest. Did you think about that? The next child. Perfect. We started off by selling the food that we grew at farmers markets, and then we were a CSA for a while, so we fed about 20 families from our property, and then Eat New Zealand really took over my life, and it just wasn't possible to keep the CSA going, so we started to do more teaching and more education from the farm, and so now we run seasonal workshops, we do pop-ups and open days, and we also consult and help other people establish food farms as well. So really we're a teaching farm. We still produce enough food to feed us and just about everybody here this year, it feels like. But that's not our main purpose anymore.
Speaking of the nitty-gritty of the food farm, what do you think is a mistake that you guys made in the early days that you actually think people starting out with small farms probably need to make so they can learn?
There's been so many of them, but one of them that sticks in my mind, which is probably relevant for any size garden, is the first year we started the food farm garden, we cleared it, and I grew up on an arable farm and still am slightly addicted to metal, and I rotary hoed it. And made it really tidy, which was very pleasing for me. And we planted the vegetables in it, and the first year was just really hard work keeping the weeds under control. So, doing it organically, and of course you scarify all the weed seeds, and they got out of control. I was like, well, that sucks. So the second year, as soon as everything came up, we mulched it really heavily and put like 4 inches of pea straw around everything, and it just looked beautiful. And then it got frosted and killed everything. Because what you learn is with the frost tender plants, when you put a really heavy mulch layer on it, you're stopping the heat radiate from the soil at night, and you're not getting any frost protection. That was a pretty devastating lesson for us in the first year, which I've never forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, the mistakes almost outnumber the successes, I think. And when you ask what is a thing that everybody should know, the truth is that you have to make your own mistakes. And even when someone tells you something directly, it's so important that you learn it your own way, in your own time, in your own context. So I think probably one of the most important things we've learned is to fail fast. So to not hang on to your failures and see them as a personal reflection of your character, but rather to understand that they're learnings and you can put them down quickly if you choose to, and you can move on quickly. You don't have to harbour them. And I think that became really important over the years. Also to surround yourself with amazing humans who know more than you do. And it's so funny when you start out and you're young and all you're surrounded with is amazing humans that know more than you do. And then 20 years on and you realise that there's still just as many amazing humans, it's just that there are less that know more than you do. And so that sort of journey of discovery of being the beginners through to feeling like we had a handle on things, through to being people who felt that we had useful understanding and knowledge that we could share with other people has been a real journey. But just encourage people to make all the mistakes. And there is no perfect farm and there is no version of the perfect food farm. It's simply a reflection of who we are and all of our imperfections, and all of the lack of time we have and all of the lack of resource we have and all of the weather events and earthquakes and pandemics that we've survived over the last 20 years. The food farm collects all of that understanding, and in its imperfection is perfection, if that makes sense. So if you start this journey and you're looking for perfection, you will never find it, because it's actually the journey and not the destination. And so I think all we've learnt over 20 years is really to embrace our failures and our imperfections.
Very wise and philosophical one, thank you. She gives a good pep talk after a bad grade or something, as you can probably tell.
Yeah.
So another question. I have just been on a big trip overseas recently. I went to Canada and Europe, and I found it really interesting to see a completely different continent with a completely different amount of people on a much smaller amount of land. In New Zealand, we've got a lot of land, and I know it might not seem like it, but a lot of water and not that many people at the moment. But I know that the population is set to increase a lot, especially over my lifetime and my working lifetime. And so I was wondering, how do you guys see the evolution of small farms or even urban farms within this context, seeing as we're not currently densely populated, but we could start to become more densely populated in the future?
I think Angela's probably got more to say on this than what I will, but for me it's just, like, we live on 6 hectares, which is an amazing privilege, which is 60,000 square metres, but most people have, going forwards, access to 100 or 200, 300, 400 square metres, and that's actually what it is. So I think understanding and developing systems where you can grow food in little tiny spaces in pots and move them around, it's totally legitimate, and I applaud people doing that. And if I lived on a block like that, I would have pots I'd drag around the house as the sun changes and stuff like that, because shade's a really big issue. And that's how a lot of food can be grown. And you don't have to have a big open paddock and wheelbarrows and spades and sheds and stuff. You can still grow a lot of stuff even on a balcony or on rooftops or shared areas and all those sorts of things. But I know Angela's just itching to get into peri-urban production, so I will hand the microphone over.
I so thought you were going to say perimenopause just then. And that laugh would suggest so do most of the rest of the women in the room. The first thing I'd like to say is, Tim, when you move the pots around the house, it's okay to put them on wheels. Yeah, life hack. Yeah. Yeah, I suspect that the future might be way more multi-generational living than we currently experience. So somehow we've got to this ideal situation where our children leave home and they set up their farm or their house with their own mortgage and all of their debt cycle, and that somehow we're meant to continually, generation after generation, have that sense of insular living. And I don't think that that's the vast majority of most of human history. I think anybody that's had small children and understands the power of having other generations and extended families around you will understand how powerful and useful that is. So I suspect what will come next is much more multi-generational living. I'm really interested in how we manifest that and how that shows up, and I suspect it will be culture that leads and government that follows a little bit. I don't think we should wait for the policy or the legislation that allows multi-generational living to climb and to create. I think the idea of living multi-generationally is really powerful and really useful. And I'm saying this because I've got 2 children in the room. So Flynn's just sitting in the corner going, oh my God, I'm so leaving home as soon as I possibly can. And that's fine, but hopefully one day you might be back.
I also have insider information that Mum quite likes having kids at home because then we can do the weeding.
Which is a great theory, but they fucking don't.
Gee, I would like to add for people with children, there's a real sweet spot between like 14 and 16 where they've developed some maturity. They can do lots of jobs and stuff, so you've got to crank that window because as soon as they've got a licence, they just disappear.
And I would also like to add that the word weeding and the eye roll has been completely perfected by our children. And I can make them do it if I manifest, can you weed that bit the size of a bale? And they'll go, oh, and then they'll go, I'll give you 10 minutes. And so they weed something the size of a bale for 10 minutes, which is not really useful when you've got 16 acres. But having said that, and I think we were talking about this earlier as well, it's not what you tell them to do, it's what you show them. And so what we've found over the years is that our children are all extraordinary except for their weeding in a whole lot of ways because they've manifested who they are in context of the place that we live. And so we didn't teach them how to cook. We didn't teach them that good food makes them feel good. We didn't teach them that connection to nature is a really important part of mental health. They just experienced it and they just lived it. And I often think about the fact that teaching children doesn't work as much as being the change that you want or being what you want to see them be in the world, which is really unfortunate because it means that they're clearly going to grow up with an addiction for Chardonnay. But other than that, Ruby when she was 11 years old, she stood on a stage and declared that she was going to be a chef. Unfortunately for her, we have like 1 million friends who are chefs, including her godfather. So every single one of them tried to talk her out of it for the next 10 years. She comes back from overseas, has a degree in environmental science, and is currently cooking. So, it's really funny, isn't it? You have aspirations for your children, but you don't realise that they absorb like osmosis the life that you create for them. And I think that's incredibly important.
Nice, Mom. Going off of the back of that, I guess now that you have successfully half to 3/4 to 100% raised your children, what do you think the future of the food farm is, apart from feeding your 3 adult children?
I think one thing that we're really aware of, and when you do a day's work or you do something for a day, and at the end of it, no matter how hard it was or what you had to do or whatever, you actually feel like you made a difference. And for me, that's engaging with the schools and the tamariki and those younger people and being able to do it. But I'd have to say at the moment, I don't feel like it's particularly well supported by the system. It's hard to get access, there's no funding and stuff like that. So Angela's taken the opportunity to reach out to people like Comcol, who's attached to Rangiora High School, and that's kind of the kids that don't fit in the school system. Like sort of the troublesome kids, and they come to the farm and they're awesome and they have a great day, and I feel like they leave feeling better and I feel like we've achieved something. So I would really like to get into that more. I'm not sure how to make it work or what the details are yet, but that's something that I think we're both really aware of. That's when you get to the end of one of those days, it's like, I think we've done some good today. So that's really powerful and meaningful, which is great.
Yeah, I think we have those moments now because we've been doing workshops for so many years and we've just written a book, and people know more who we are if they've been to a workshop or they understand more. And it's when you see, they show you photos of their gardens or their tomatoes or their orchard babies, and you're like, wow, this is like so powerful. This is something that's so much bigger than us, and our purpose has moved way beyond our family. So continuing that connection to community and continuing to be a place that people feel safe to learn. And I love getting messages on social media with pictures of people's tomatoes going, what's going on with my tomatoes? You know, this sort of collective knowledge building that we do as community, I think, is just such an important part of the future of the food farm. I'm really hopeful that it is a multi-generational small farm, and that's quite an unusual thing in New Zealand. New Zealand has an incredibly high turnover of lifestyle blocks. I hate that term, lifestyle blocks, and so we really want to show what it could look like if a family holds on and is stewards of a piece of land for more than one generation. I think that would be pretty interesting.
That is all of my questions, so we're going to open it up to the floor, but just before I do that, I just want to take a moment to publicly say how proud of you guys I am. I wanted to say it, but I didn't realise I was going to cry so quickly. But I think anyone in this room who has ever met my parents can tell pretty quickly how incredible they are. And they're both very, very different, but they're great examples of how people can be so different and make such an amazing team. And you guys have taught me and my siblings so much, and our lives will always be a certain way, and we will always value such incredible things because of you both. So, yeah, yes. Thank you. Anyway, well, does anyone have a question? Yes.
I think the program that you were just talking about, or if it's a program or not, do you have those same people come back, and are they mostly boys?
They are coming back again. So we had a group at the end of last year, and they're coming back again soon because they haven't got a job, a lot of them, so they've gone back to that program. And it was a mixture of boys and girls, eh? And not all of them were really into food and cooking, but I just felt like that particular, they didn't have to come if they didn't want to. And I just felt like it was a really engaging day for them and gave them some hope, and particularly some of them are really interested in food and so on and cooking. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think that we underestimate the power of imagination that children have. And we had another group from a private school from Auckland. So, there's sort of the other kids who are nailing the system and are fully supported in so many ways. and their ability to imagine systems blew my mind. Like, it's just a reminder that what comes next is not hampered by the baggage of what we have. And so I think whether they're kids who don't fit inside the school system or kids that do, that there's value in embracing the diversity of thinking and diversity of those perspectives. And I think I'm so excited for what comes next. They just leave us in the dust. And of course, we've all been responsible for raising them. So, you know, good on us. But I think it's really exciting. It's even exciting to see here, like I've noticed this year, there are the children of people that I know that are volunteers. And I think that's just really beautiful. There's this another generation that's coming through that are holding this vision that they have. And I wonder what underground will be like in 10 years' time or 15 years' time when we have this whole next generation. I think that's really awesome.
I'm not quite sure how to word this either, but the kids that come typically would have been called neurodivergent, but now there's so many people apparently are neurodivergent, like that's kind of normal. I'm quite confused about neurodiversity now. And we've got a saying that I didn't hear the question, but the answer is diversity. Just like embracing people in all their shapes, colours, and vibrations. And the other day, I met someone that could taste colour and stuff like that. It's just bring all that in and work together, and that's how we'll move it forwards.
Do you on your farm have management blocks that people can then grow into to learn the decisions that you make so that they keep growing? Do you have that? So have you thought of that?
Yeah, we've talked about it. I think that's a decision for our children and not for us. I think if we were ever in a position where we wanted to lease land or have a different form of ownership, then that has to be a communal decision by our children. I don't think that's for us. But I am really interested in what comes next in terms of land ownership, because it's getting almost impossible for our young people to own land. So I'm really open to those conversations and to working out what that might be. We've been woofing hosts for about 18 years, so we've had young people from over 300 woofers from around the world, and so we keep in touch with so many of them, and so it's often really beautiful to see how they interpret what we do as they go back to their lives. And sometimes that's just about growing things on a balcony in Berlin, and sometimes that's about starting their own food farm. So yeah, I think there's great power in being an example. Yep.
The reason I bring it up is on our own farm we have 7 management blocks, and one of them is a trial unit, and when my son came home from his professional surveying career, he managed 2 of those blocks as assistant manager. I was the manager. Now he ends up managing the whole 7 and I'm the assistant. But I mean, it's just a way of introducing that succession without the competition, yet you've still got this trial area. There's too many good ideas disguised in a pair of overalls.
Yeah.
And as you talk, the imagination.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It keeps you young because they're bringing on these ideas.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. I love the idea of letting them have free rein. I'm not sure what Flynn would turn his part of the food farm into. Probably like a 4-wheel drive park. Yeah, but I am really excited about what comes next.
So you touched on it a little bit about your kids, but from our experience, we find that there's a lot of pushback from our kids. We grow our own food and we try and make as much as we can. We get a lot of pushback from them to say, my friends get to have this, how come I don't get to have it? This is an ingredients house, there's no food.
My brother is so bad for that. He does that pretty much every day.
Yeah, so our youngest is 7, our oldest is 15. Does that go away, or is it? Yeah.
I can give you some insider tips. I do think that there's three of us all together, and each of us three are quite different, and I think have had our own peaks and troughs in terms of enthusiasm for the whole thing, and at different periods. But I remember, for example, we used to, very lucky, Dad made our lunches every single day for school, and often we would get warm food in a thermos. And I remember there was a time when I was in primary school where I would trade my warm dal and rice in a thermos for pre-sliced ham and those lolly strings, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I look back on it now and I'm like, why on earth did I ever think that was a good trade? I was definitely losing out. But it was just because it was that exact thing, why do I have to have a thermos? No one else has a thermos. Why do I have to be seen to have so much emphasis put on one particular aspect? And I don't know about my other two siblings, but I think it is just a phase thing. And I think for me, it was really wonderful to have it at such an intense constant in my life. And you can kind of, as you do when you're a young kid and a young teenager, and then sort of in high school, you are changing so much and everything is so overwhelming, that I found that actually the emphasis on food and the environment was a really nice touchpad to come back to, even if you maybe don't tell your parents that. So they might be sneaky about it, but I would say that there is actually such a power in having a really constant set of values, and you might find that it just takes 10 years for them to come around to it. Yeah.
We've talked about this a lot, and I guess it comes down to don't push it because it won't work.
Yeah.
Be patient. And trust they'll circle back. Yeah. And if they don't, well, by then they're adults and they'll make their own choices. So
it's interesting because our oldest is the one who moans about living in an ingredient house.
Yeah.
He's actually just doing really well at high school cooking because he's been through osmosis.
Yeah, it is. It's massive osmosis. So they'll even tell you that they don't like food but cook it themselves. Flynn's ability, when he cooks a meal, he has accompaniments and garnishes. I'm not even kidding. The man does not just do eggs. So, there's this real sense of they'll say one thing, but actually what they're being and learning is something else. Yeah. Yep.
What would you rephrase the term lifestyle block to? Being 2 years into our food farm journey, we know it's not easy. But what would you rephrase? You said you wouldn't call a lifestyle block.
Yeah, I really like the term small farm, and I think around the world there are versions of small farms, and in fact in lots of places of the world what we have wouldn't even be a small farm, it would be a large farm depending where in the world you were. So I don't like lifestyle block because it has connotations. I've heard it called a life sentence block. I've heard it be referred to that you have some type of lifestyle when I'm not sure what type of lifestyle. It feels unimportant calling it a lifestyle block. It feels like it's not a productive place. It's a place that you have a lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? And I hate it so much that I think I managed to convince the editor of Lifestyle Block magazine to rename it On the Land. I'm not even kidding. Which he's probably lived to regret, but I claim that one.
I think that is our time up. But thank you all very much for coming. It's really wonderful to see so many of you and so many familiar faces as well. Do you guys have some books?
Oh yeah, do a spoke ropes.
Oh, Mum and Dad wrote a book. There's some pictures of me and my siblings in it as well. There's one of me holding some blackcurrants that I actually really didn't like, but it made it in anyway. So, but no, they wrote a book for 20 years on the food farm. It is a collection of recipes, but also a little bit of how-to, because so much of our food, I was going to say takes a really long time, but it does. There's heaps of tips in there. It goes through the seasons, and Mum wrote the words and Dad wrote the recipes. So Yeah.
It's available for sale.
And sorry, it's available for sale.
If you want to come up, if you're interested, we can make sure that we sign them. I've got a pen, so that's a
I
winning.
also have a pen.
Oh my God, we are winning.
Do we buy them here?
Yep, you can buy them here. They're also over in the shop if you're too embarrassed afterwards to come and buy one from us. Thank you so much. We are so here for families that are navigating this space, whether you've got a big farm or a small farm. We don't have all the questions and each family is different, but it's something that we feel is really important to support families as they find their way to growing their own food. So here's to many more orchards and food forests in the end.